there's no way that they actually think this, which is why I felt inclined to reach out to someone from production just for help navigating and for that validity of like, I'm not crazy, am I? Like it was a very, very weird, the whole thing.
Well, let's talk about your season of Paradise a little more specifically. Obviously, with the exception of the date with Ivan, it didn't take long for kind of chaos to ensue and this trip to San Diego that, you know, people had comments on. And I feel like we've pretty much well established from everyone that no one crossed a line in San Diego. That's your perspective as well, right?
I mean,
okay, maybe not.
Well, this is the thing, is I'm very aware of other people's recollections of what happened in San Diego. I think it's especially at the very beginning when the first invite was sent, you know, from Kody, hey, I'm back from filming. I hadn't seen her in months. I actually want to maybe like just get some friends together at a house in San Diego. You're welcome to come if you can make it. Great. I went thinking, well, I'm going to spend some time with Nikki, but I mean, not with Nikki. I'm sorry. That's my best friend. Let me start that over. I'm going to spend some time with Kody, and then I'll be able to like reconnect with her. Right. But then once this conversation started, like, oh, so-and-so's coming, so-and-so's coming, like a lot of people that I didn't really know, the only other person that I really would have known was actually Alana, because we were on math season together. So when I went, I thought, okay, well, I want to kind of conduct myself in a way that, you know, is a great first impression. And everyone pretty much did the same thing, I would like to say. But I think there were small moments that I feel are conveniently being left out solely because I can say for a fact, I remember everything that happened in San Diego. I was never once blackout drunk. It was never anything like that for me because I was around people that I didn't know. And I personally get anxious drinking heavily around people that I don't know.
Right.
So, and it's not to say that everybody else was trash either, but you know, it's like, there's certain things that happen that, you know, people are speaking on, but they're not really divulging in the full details. Like I know for a fact that I saw Alana sitting in the jacuzzi with Chris on his lap and Brett was sitting right next to them. Brett, unfortunately, is not a reliable source for me though, because, you know, but it was things like that was what was on my mind during Paradise. Because I remember asking Chris after I gave him the rose, it was the very first full day together. We sat on the daybed and I asked him, you know, obviously more women were coming and I wanted us to kind of be on the same page because he came in hot, right? Saying, right. I'm here with Jessenia. And he immediately took me on the date, things like that. So I was kind of riding on this high of like, wow, this guy's like really into me. I didn't think I made that big of an impression in San Diego, considering we were all just like in a group of people. So I asked him flat out, you know, what can I expect if more ladies were to come next week? And I was also coming from the mindset of every time a relationship was established in Paradise, something happened, right? Yeah. So I was already kind of in my head. And I remember asking specifically after that, I said, or how about what should I expect from you if Alana were to come? Okay. Because based off of certain body language that I had been seeing in San Diego, and I will preface this, that was her sitting in his lap in the jacuzzi was just the one time that I ever saw anything. Yes, they had like other casual conversations, but I knew that they had actually spent time together in Austin. I knew it was like for an event, I think for
Mike Johnson, I think. Yeah.
For Mike. And I won't share details that were given to me about that weekend because they didn't come straight from their mouth. And that's the thing that I want to preface as well, is I'm not going to just spread rumors when I heard it from third parties, but I know what I saw in San Diego, and the fact that they won't share at least that detail, I'll let the audience kind of figure out why. But I do recall asking him specifically, what should I expect from you? Just to be clear, just for him to have the opportunity to give me that, you know, fair answer and say, well, I mean, if any woman, Alana or not, were to come that I felt that I could have a stronger relationship with, I would hope you'd understand that I want to explore that. And I would understand, because I had done the exact same thing.
Right.
So it's like, I never.
But he didn't say that?
No, he didn't. He just said, no, like I came here for you and I really just want to, you know, spend some time with you here in Paradise. Well, the way he said it too was more like, I want to spend time here in Paradise. And then everything about me kind of came after that. I was like the second priority. And I want to preface that, you know, I'm coming at this, you know, as lightly as I can, because I've personally moved on from the whole situation. But I think it's been very difficult to look away when you have two people who are constantly kind of like continuing this narrative that just isn't true, you know, and I'll speak for myself when I say this, but I did in fact apologize to Alana. And she,
after the show, was it when the show was airing or?
After the show. So I guess the show was still technically airing. It was after our episode, the whole craziness. You know, I gave it a couple days and I reached out to her and I said, you know, I really, you know, I wanted to give you some space, but I wanted to come to you and tell you that genuinely, I'm so sorry for how things ended up in Paradise. And then when I think about what I would do differently, I wouldn't have cut you off, because I cut her off and I told her, honestly, I'm so embarrassed by that specifically because you deserve to speak. And I think I was so clouded with like my emotions, which is, it's hard to deal with when you feel hurt, when you feel lied to, that I just allowed that to control me versus like trying to be as centered as possible. And she acknowledged the apology. And then, you know, the conversation went on and I started to put the pieces together that we had very different recollections of San Diego. And it started to even become a concern because I felt as though I was being made to feel as though I should question my reality. And that's when things really started becoming a problem for me, to the point where I even reached out to, you know, a member of production to help me navigate this. And they just told me, don't interact. And that's exactly what I did. So I had blocked them on social, you know, through the numbers and everything, and just hadn't spoke to them up until I saw that interview. And that was only like 2 weeks ago. And then I unblocked Alana, sent her the text, which delivered. So I think she blocked me after I texted her. And, you know, I just left it at that. I never waited for a response from her either. Cause
So you reached out again, you mean?
Yeah, I reached out again and I had told her, I said, you know, I did not want to argue with her first because why? This happened almost a year ago. Like, you know, it's done. And I get if you're hurt, that's fair, but don't drag my name all around the dirt along with it, you know? So I told her, you know, it's here plain as day. I forwarded her the screenshot of my apology. You know, I don't understand why this is what you're choosing to do, but at least be honest about this. Just like all I asked was honesty from Chris's part, which he never gave me. So at least be honest about whether or not you received an apology, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know. It was difficult to navigate, but it is what it is. And I think it was already too long, or at least I didn't want to deal with people having this misperception of me any longer because they went like on a podcast tour, I guess. And it was just the same thing. And part of me is like, how many times can you repackage the same story?
Yeah.
But, you know, every single time it was said totally incorrectly. So
do you think anything would have been different because as from a viewer perspective, watching everything play out, what made it kind of hard also was the fact that there was the Brendan and Pieper part where it's like they were technically doing the same thing, or at least that's what it felt like. And they were getting off scot-free. And because it kind of became like a group of people versus two. And I don't know, I'm not saying that's anyone's fault or who could be a million people. I don't know. But the way it aired and how we saw it, then it like turned into like a gang up kind of thing when you had Brendan and Pieper right there. Like, I feel like that's a big part of it.
Oh yeah, and I completely agree because I think it's difficult to, I guess, think straight in the sense when, this is the thing for me, it was never about, oh, he's with Alana now, so that's why she's mad. No, it was about, you had the opportunity to be honest and for us to say, you know what, we're going to be open to exploring other options regardless of what happens. But instead he continued to assure me, no, I'm here for you. I'm here for you. And instead he let it all happen in a very messy way during the party, which was hurtful and it was embarrassing and it was upsetting. So yes, I should have really been the only one approaching anyone about it. And if I'm completely honest, I probably wouldn't have, but I think that there were underlying issues that I was not totally aware of that later Joe actually mentioned on Clickbait as well, where he's like, you know, he would talk about followers and things like that. So I think in a lot of ways, he was already rubbing people the wrong way, it seems.
Right.
And so that was something that I wasn't totally aware of the details, but you know, the conversation prior to when they came back from the date was like, I think, you know, they kind of filled me in a little bit on what had been going on with him. So I don't know what happened with the guys that they felt like, oh, first it's this, then this, and now this. So you know, it was kind of like all of that collectively. It wasn't just about him and Alana, definitely not. And I think that again, you know, it could be blamed with editing as well, that they just kind of want to, I guess, like make things a lot smaller because there's like a short airtime.
Yeah.
And the whole Brendan and Pieper thing, I personally feel the way Brendan was, and again, I'm not trying to have drama with anybody, but just like, you know,
they don't listen to this.
I know. I was there.
I remember.
Yeah. Like I was there and you could sense that he was getting very heated, and it was almost one of those things where you just didn't want it to escalate any further. So I don't feel like they really felt like it was going to go anywhere, you know, and there was a lot of like repetitive things that I feel were cut out, which is why I feel it never went deeper than what was aired, because he wasn't really giving us anything. So it wasn't like we could say the same thing over and over again. And he was just like, and so.
Yeah. It's hard to like, if you can't interact and it gets to a point of just like wanting to be healthy and moving on, like for everyone else's sake on the beach.
Right.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I mean, and I don't blame people for getting so upset over it, because I don't believe that Chris and Alana deserved any of that. I think, you know, my biggest regret, I guess, because people have asked, do you get, I think now that I think my biggest regret, I think would be not handling my emotions a little better. I think I certainly could have done that. I certainly could have had the grace to give Alana the opportunity to speak. But it's like, I don't know, I guess part of me is, you know, I gave Chris the opportunity to speak, but he was never honest. And it was already so off the deep end at that point that I just felt like just upset over everything. And I just didn't want to hear anything, but that doesn't make it fair. And, you know, I get where people are coming from.
The formula of the show in general, it's hard because the formula is for you guys all date each other, but then, and understandably, your emotions get involved. Everything's heightened. You have nothing else to think about on this beach besides this situation. So obviously, everyone's like quote unquote in love in 2 seconds, which I get. That's the point. That's why they do it this way. You're not in the real world for a reason. But the formula of the show is to kind of date each other. But do you think the key to staying out of mess is just the, you know, on the side, hey, like, I like you and let's see what happens, but like, I want to keep it open, and everyone just like being honest with each other? Is that the way to avoid this? Because it is the point of the show. But so from the audience, it's like, they can do what they want. But then other times it's like, no, that was F-boy behavior. Like it's kind of, it depends also. Like, I feel like some people get away with it and other people get called out. And I don't know why that is either.
Well, but that's why I think, I mean, it's not even like clear communication is not even just the formula for the show. It's a formula for any relationship, especially in the real world. And I firmly believe that when you're clear with someone from the get-go, that's the best way to avoid, you know, hurting each other's feelings or making sure there's no miscommunication or misunderstandings, I guess. You know, like people were dogging on me so hard, like, oh, but she did the same thing to Ivan. It's like, no, I had a very clear conversation with Ivan on the daybed. And I told him specifically, like I would be interested in, you know, meeting someone else. And here's the thing is I definitely was ready to be set on Ivan, which is why I was so surprised to see his interview while I was already on the date, of him saying like, oh, I'm going to have the conversation with her for us to be exclusive. It's like, why did you wait until I went on the date? If you did it before and we're like, listen, honestly, I don't want you to go on this date because this isn't, and I would have said, okay, I'm not going on a date then, because I honestly was waiting for that, but it just never happened. So I think that, you know, probably could have avoided the whole mess. And then Chris and Alana, you know, would have stayed in paradise and they would have done their own thing. And that's great, you know, because I don't think they're bad people. I just think the way they handled everything, I like to think was also from an emotional place, because I will tell you, the people who texted me before the show aired and after we already went home are very different people from who texted me after the show aired, especially our episode. And it to the point where it felt a little confusing and overwhelming, because I thought there's no way that they actually think this. Which is why I felt inclined to reach out to someone from production just for help navigating and for that validity of like, I'm not crazy, am I? Like it was very weird, the whole thing.
Hey everyone, I'm Christina Garibaldi, the host of Us Weekly Celebrity Coverage. Don't forget to hit subscribe for the latest celebrity news, tips, and video. And for much more content, make sure you head on over to usmagazine.com, the official home of Us Weekly Magazine.